Thanks. Okay, also dann schauen wir uns jetzt mal die Epson-Demo an, von der mir ein Kollege schon mit gleißenden Augen berichtet hat.
And I'm not even going to judge you for not coming to see me yesterday or the day before. I assume you just got here. Traffic was really bad. So you are forgiven. You are forgiven for going to look at other things first. Regardless, I'm thrilled you're here. My name is Rob Brennan. I'm the technical account manager with Epson. And at the Epson booth, come on and grab a seat. I just started. At the Epson booth this year in this particular room, we're doing a shootout. I'm sure you've heard that that's what's happening, and I know why you're here. The violence and the spiciness, right? Well, unfortunately, there's not going to be that much violence. There might be some spiciness, but for the most part, what we really want to talk about is how the Epson high brightness projectors really can help your business. In order to show you and contextualize the performance differences, quite frankly, I need help. I need help from companies like Sony and JVC, and they're great companies. I'm not here to bash them, right? Sterling reputations, amazing products. But I need to be able to show you kind of where they are, where the industry generally is, and how what Epson is doing is different, right? So, normally when you come to see a projector manufacturer, let's say, or maybe even a TV manufacturer, but let's keep it on projectors. Normally, let's be honest with each other. What is the vendor trying to do? The vendor is trying to get you to help them, right? The vendor comes in and says, rather than sell this brand's product that's $10,000 and has X number of lumens and has XYZ features and has 40 points of margin, sell my brand's product that's $10,000 and the same amount of lumens and the basic same amount of features and the same amount of margin, right? And maybe you do, or maybe you don't, maybe you prefer one, or maybe you prefer the other, and that's all fine. But what is the benefit to you and your business? Probably nothing. Right? The reality is probably nothing. You're not going to sell more projectors. You might just sell a different brand's projector, right? This is what's different about the shootout this year. I'm not here to talk about that. Full disclosure, I do want that, right? I do want my competitors' market share, but I'm willing to trade you something for it. I'm going to give you something in return. I'm going to show you how with Epson and the Q series specifically, you can sell more projectors, not just my projectors. That's the key takeaway I want you to keep in mind as we're having this conversation, okay? Now, a lot of new faces here, people I haven't met before. I'm Rob, by the way. Nice to meet you. Atalo, is am I pronouncing that right, Atalo? What? Atalo, is that your name? Yeah. Perfect. We've never met before. I don't know anything about your business. I don't know about your projector sales. I don't know your AV business at all. But I imagine your business probably has been following the trend of the greater channel over the last 5 to 7 years, which is your projector sales are flat to down, flat to down, flat to down year over year. Projection is not usually a huge growth category, right? I'm going to help you change that. And it's easy to understand why projector sales are flat to down. TV, right? Years ago, we used to sell 92-inch screens with a projector. That's because a 50-inch TV was a big TV in those days. So 92-inch was for big boys, right? And you only needed 800 lumens or so to fire up a 92-inch screen, no problem. And then TVs responded. They said, let's get serious. 65, 75, 85, and projectors responded. You like that? How about 2,000 lumens, 1,800 lumens, and we'll do a 120-inch screen. See ya, TVs, right? The problem is today, when the show ends at 3 in the afternoon, you can drive over to Costco and you can spend $1,601.50 and you can buy a 98-inch TV and a hot dog. And that's a heck of a value right there, right? And how have projectors responded? Well, we're still offering you 2,000 lumens at about 120 inches at 10 times the cost of the TV. That's what's happened to your projector sales. The value proposition that used to be so much better dollars per inch for projection no longer is, right? Epson is going to help you change that with high brightness, because high brightness unlocks 3 things. The first thing that unlocks is what I was just talking about, bigger sizes. Not 120 inch to compete against a 100 inch TV. I'm talking 130s, 140s, 150s, 160s, which is what I have in the room here today. In fact, these are identical. 160-inch Stewart film screens. They're 16 by 9, and the material I'm using is Studio Tech 130, so it has a beam of 1.3. That's what I'll be lighting up the room for you today. Right? So when someone comes in and says, well, I was considering that 98-inch television, I want you to go like this. How cute. How adorable. Right? 98 inches, are you going to put that in your bathroom? Right? Or do you want a real display, 160-inch for real immersion? So brighter means bigger. The second thing that brightness is going to unlock for you is the ability to place projectors in different types of environments, right? Too few customers have dedicated rooms that they're willing to set aside to just watch content. Those that do, we love them, right? And they put in some amazing theaters. That's fantastic, but we need to be able to sell to more customers, people who don't have dedicated spaces. And everybody has at least a media room or a family room or a living room or a game room or a multi-purpose room or a loft to the top of their stairs that's there for no reason, or they have a bedroom because their kids went off to college, thank God they finally left, and we can convert that bedroom to a more usable space. We have these extra spaces, but we don't want to dedicate them to one purpose, and we're not going to paint them black, and we're not going to black out the windows, we're not going to change the carpet, and we're not going to say, my friend here in the green shirt, you can't wear a green shirt in my theater room because the reflection off your shirt is ruining my contrast. Right? And if we have high brightness, we can deploy projectors in spaces where today you only deploy television. So that's the second thing high brightness does for us. Those are two growth metrics. The third thing that it's going to do for us is empower really impactful HD, right? Because projectors do have a problem. I've been in this industry for 15 years. I was around for the launch of the world's first 4K projector, the world's first HDR projector, and in all that time, I've been personally providing the following recommendation to customers, to integrators, to installers, to calibrators, and to dealers. And this is criticism that I still have today for most projectors. In my personal opinion, this is not an Epson opinion, and I've had this opinion when I worked for other manufacturers as well. In my personal opinion, you should turn off HDR in your projector, because your projector is likely not bright enough and your screen size is too large to give you an impactful HDR experience. As a result, your HDR experience on your projector is far too dim, it's missing the point, you should watch SDR instead. I know that's hard to hear, but SDR on a projector still looks amazing, and in most cases, better than HDR. And this is not criticism that I point only at my competitors. Epson projectors that are in the 2700 lumen range, like the brand new LS9000 and the LS12000, depending on the screen size, I would say the same thing. I personally recommend you watch SDR instead of HDR. It's a better experience, right? So those are the three things that high brightness does. That is what we're here to talk about. The only thing left to do is to do it. So real quick, let me walk through the projectors, explain what it is we're looking at, and then make sure that we're being as fair as possible. So, starting on the right-hand side, over here, we have the Epson QL3000 projector. This is a 6,000 lumen projector that retails for $16,000. That's the MSRP. It is interchangeable lens. There's a dozen lenses that are compatible with this projector. The lens that I'm using in this particular application is called the ELPL M15, or just the M15 for short. It is the standard lens, 1.52 to 2.47 throw ratio. So it's the most popular lens that's typically sold with this projector. It has an MSRP of $1,880, bringing the combined total of this solution to $17,880. Okay? Compact, quiet, 28 decibels, standard power. That's what's on this side. Over here, from Sony, we have the XW6100ES. This projector is $19,000. Now, can we agree that $17,880 is basically $18,000? And $18,000 is basically $19,000. These are the same price. The customer that buys this projector would consider this projector, and the customer that buys this projector would consider this projector, right? I don't consider the $1,120 an advantage. They're the same price, okay? So, about the Sony, 2,700 lumens, so less than half the brightness of the Sony. Both projectors are 4K, both projectors are laser, both projectors are compact, both projectors are relatively quiet, liquid crystal on silicone versus 3-chip 3 LCD. Okay? So, now, let's make sure I'm not cheating. It is important for me when I do a shootout that you get a fair representation of what things actually do. And you should trust me, because my name is Rob Brennan, I work for Epson, and Epson's right here on my shirt. Right? So whenever a vendor or manufacturer comes to you and starts talking to you, your little bullshit intent should go, I'm just gonna, a little grain of salt with everything. So because you don't know me, I'm gonna do the following to help build as much trust as possible. Right? First, let's go into the menu. The recommended picture mode based on the owner's manual for Sony for watching movies at home in the dark is Cinema Film 1. So we're in Cinema Film 1 and I'm going to do a factory reset on that picture mode. So this is the picture mode the manual recommends for what we're about to do. All right, that's as fair as I can make it. Over here, cinema mode, same thing, is the recommended mode, and I'm going to go into reset, and I'm going to do this, and it's now reset. All right, so the projectors are set up, they're in their modes prescribed by the manufacturer, and the picture quality has been reset to where it needs to be. I don't have my Vanna, so I have to control the lights myself.
I'm sorry.
Oh, it's too late. Let's take a reach. And there we go, we're going to increase the romance by 50%. And since, as we discussed earlier, this is the very first demo you've been to at CEDIA, you don't know this yet, but I'm the only person playing F1. See, that laughing means now I know you saw somebody else first, and now my feelings are hurt. Oh, missed it. Let's go over. All right. So, a little handshake, 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 navigating HDCP, the vagaries of HDMI, and then the projection. So, right away you can notice a difference in brightness between the two projectors. Now, part of the reason there's a difference in brightness is obviously the Epson projector is more than double the brightness, right? So, we know that. Because of that brightness, I can go larger. We've already discussed that, 160-inch screens. Because of that brightness, I can put a projector in a brighter room. We've already discussed that. But the third thing we talked about was HDR, and I want to focus on that for a moment here. This is HDR 10 content on both projectors. So what is happening? There's this thing in HDR called tone mapping. And there are two flavors. There's dynamic tone mapping and static tone mapping, essentially, right? But largely, regardless of the flavor of tone mapping does kind of the same thing. It takes into consideration the average picture level, or APL, which is really just the average brightness level, and it compares that to the peak brightness in any given scene or content. It has to make a decision. Because this movie is shot at 1,000 nits peak brightness, so that's the dynamic range of the content, 0 to 1,000. But neither of these projectors can make 0 to 1,000 nits happen on screen. So we have to squish, squeeze, adjust, modify the signal down to within the capability of the display. So, average picture level in this case is high. What that means is I have to compress the entire image down. If the average picture level was low, I could just trim the top off. I could just cut off the highlights. So imagine watching the movie Alien. The movie Alien is communicated through the following colors: black, near black, kind of black, sort of black, mostly black, and dark gray. That movie has very low average picture level. So when I do my tone mapping, I mostly can just cut off the highlights, and I don't have to adjust the image down very much. But in a movie like this, relatively high picture level. This movie is shot practically. Actually, the director and cinematographer, I'm familiar with them. I've actually met them on several occasions. I've worked together with them on several projects. When they were getting ready to film this, we were discussing it. They actually worked with Sony Professional Camera Division to develop new cameras that were small, compact, lightweight, and they could bolt directly onto these cars, drive the cars at top speed, and capture this footage. This is shot outdoor during the day, and it's lit practically. But the projector on the left, because of the limited brightness, looks like it's dusk. Right? It looks like the vampire is about to jump out, because this actually is a vampire movie about how F1 drivers save the world from the vampire menace. Right? That's what's happening to the HDR, which is why, again, for the last 10 years, I've given the personal recommendation that in nearly every case, you probably want to disable HDR in your projectors at home. Right? So that's the first demonstration. Let's go ahead and change gears that was the Sony. I'm going to switch over and show you the same content compared to the same Epson using a JVC projector. So again, we're still with the QL3000 over here, 6,000 lumens. The projector I'm switching to is from JVC, the NZ800. Now the NZ800 and the Sony we just looked at from a spec perspective are very similar. They're both $19,000, they're both liquid crystal on silicone, they're both 2,700 lumens, right? There are some differences, however. The reason I want to show you the two different projectors, quite frankly, is has anyone ever met a fan of JVC? Right? They're passionate. You know how passionate they are? They'll follow you to the parking lot and stab you. And I'm here for that kind of passion. I have no problem with it, right? If you love a brand enough to come and commit a felonious assault on my person, I respect you, right? Seriously. But my point is, and again, part of the reason why people love JVC or they love Sony is that JVC and Sony, they do tune their products differently, right? And if you happen to love one of those brands for their tuning, that's great. That's I have no problem with that, right? You're welcome to your opinion. So if you love the black level of JVC, God bless you. If you love the processing prowess of Sony, fine, no problem. My point here is that both of those projectors from both of those very good manufacturers still have the same general problem when it comes to brightness. 2,700 lumens is still not a lot of power. So 2,700 lumens means you can't really go super large to fight against TVs, right? You can't put a projector in a bright room, which means you're not growing your business. And the HDR effect, depending on the content, is going to be mixed results, right? And so I need to show you both so that you understand it doesn't matter whether you prefer the tuning of one or the other. The same overall story of Epson Q series allows you to grow your business is true regardless. All right? So let's jump in. I need a different remote over here. We're going to use the same clip. Now, one difference with the JVC, it has different picture settings depending on SDR or HDR, and the menu is an SDR. So I have to wait for the movie to play, then I'm going to pause it, then I'm going to go into the menu, and I'm going to reset the picture mode. Now, for the JVC, the mode that we have, that's the wrong button. For the JVC, the mode that we have picked according to the description in the manual is HDR10. Per the manual, this is designed to take advantage of the full dynamic range and color gamut for watching movies at home. So we're going to reset this. So that is the HDR10 mode. And we're back out of it. And we'll hit play. So, what you're going to notice right away from comparing the previous clip to now this clip, same clip, but the previous projector to this projector, is there is a different look between the JVC and the Sony. And again, I'll say it again. If you prefer one look over the other, it's great. It's your business. We have no problem with that. But the same overall fact of the matter remains. The Epson projector, offers more than double the brightness. And because of that, the visual stimulation for the HDR is more intense. And it also means you can go to a larger screen or you can put the projector in a brighter room. None of that has changed. And that really is the point that we want to make. Now, in terms of full disclosure, because I'm trying to be as technically accurate as possible. Technically, the JVC is slightly dimmer than the Sony because the JVC utilizes a 17 by 9 imager versus a 16 by 9 imager. So on a 16 by 9 screen, I actually have a very little amount of pillar box in addition to letterbox. It's only 7%. So the Sony basically had a peak brightness of 158 nits. The JVC has a peak brightness of 149 nits in this case on this screen. Functionally, 149 and 158 are the same. But technically, there's a slight difference. In both cases, the Epson over here is producing 354 nits on screen, right? Again, both projectors, because they have tone mapping and because the average picture level is high, have to compress the signal down. The JVC, like the Sony, needs to compress the signal down a little bit further than the Epson. And because the Epson has twice the brightness, a little more than twice the brightness on screen, it preserves more of the HDR effect. This looks like dusk. Right? That looks like daytime. So, whether you buy the Sony or the JVC, and if you do, great, no problem. My personal recommendation, if you're watching content, especially at screens of this size, would be watch SDR. And leave the lights on. Right? That would be my recommendation. And I hope, and I wish you many good years, right? But if you want to turn the lights on, if you want to go larger, and if you want to have eye-popping HDR, that's what Epson's all about. Okay? Now, for the next demonstration, we're going to change gears because we're going to move away from the Epson QL, and I'm going to show you the Epson QB1000. Because it's part of the Q series, but it is fundamentally different from the QL. I want to make sure that you understand the distinction between the two. The QB1000 is really all about value. The QB1000 offers 3,300 lumens of performance at $8,000. Now, as far as models from my competitors, 3,300 lumens from JVC is $26,000, and 3,400 lumens from Sony is over $30,000. So the QB1000 is incredible value for 3,300 lumens, but let me be clear. 3,300 lumens is still a projector that's designed to go in a dark room, or at least no brighter than a dim room, right? So when I say do a 180-inch screen and leave the lights on, I don't mean with the QB1000. I don't want you to spec one and then say, hey, that dude, Rob Brennan, he said I could put a QB1000 in your living room and you could watch Judge Judy in the People's Court at 2 in the afternoon with the windows open. I did not say that. I actually did just say that, but you're forgetting the part where I said don't do that, right? That is not what I'm talking about. So the QB1000 is not part of the grow your business kind of strategy. Outside of, if you have a customer who would benefit from 3,300 lumens but can't afford $26,000, maybe you do actually make another projector sale with the QB, right? But it's still the same kind of sale. Is that clear? Everyone understand the distinction that I'm making between those two things? Okay, good. So, again, QB1000 is on the right-hand side. It is $8,000, 3,300 lumens. We're now integrated lens, not interchangeable, and it is motorized, all glass. All right, compact, quiet. On the left-hand side over here, we have another projector from Sony. This is the essentially brand new XW5100 ES. So this is $10,000, and this is 2,200 lumens with a manual lens, mixed glass, and acrylic. Okay, so from an optical perspective, the Epson's going to be a little bit better optics, motorized lens, so also installation more convenient, 50% brighter, and $2,000 less. This is also compact and quiet. Because this projector doesn't have a motorized lens, my personal recommendation, if you sell this, would be 16:9 screens only. If you pair this projector with an anamorphic screen and ultra-wide, full disclosure, Sony does have digital scaling that will allow you to zoom the image to 16:9, but you're going to lose a ton of brightness and resolution. So I don't recommend it, but in fairness to Sony, you can technically do that. Okay? So, $2,000 less, 1,100 lumens more, motorized lens, all glass optics. Value, value, value. Let's go ahead into the menu for the projector. Cinema Film 1, that's the mode. Again, reset, ready to rock. Now, this is the funny part, although all my jokes are hilarious. Thank you very much. So when I say, a few minutes ago, I was like, hey, you need to be careful with who you trust, right? And you know I work for Epson and I'm asking a lot. Hopefully this will help convince you that I'm not fooling. Because I said I want to use the correct picture mode based on the manual for the manufacturers, and then I want to reset those picture settings so they're out of the box. Here's what that means on the QB1000. It means cinema mode, but the default laser brightness for cinema mode is 85%. And so I'm going to leave it at 85%. This is a 3,300 lumen projector, and I'm not going to show you 3,300 lumens. Because I have to be fair to the rules that I set. And the rules say, use the mode that the manufacturer says to use and don't change the settings. Now, if you sell this projector, turn the brightness up. All right, the customer paid for 3,300 lumens, you should give it to them. But none of you paid me when you came here, so you only get 85%. All right, that's what we're gonna do. We'll play the same clip just so you can see the relative difference between all these projectors and these solutions. Now, because the difference in brightness is only going to be 1,100 lumens, and again, that would be at 100%, and I'm only at 85%. Handshake. Because the relative difference between the two is, in this case, not very much, the HDR difference between the two is also not very much. You can see from where you're sitting that the Epson is a little bit brighter, but this isn't like wildly different. Because 50% brighter on paper may sound like a lot, but it's actually not a lot because the ways that your eyes work. So if something gets brighter, your pupils will constrict, which means as things get brighter on a linear scale, you perceive less brightness on a curve, right? So my point here is if someone owns a projector and they're looking for an upgrade and they want something brighter, don't give them a projector that's a little bit brighter. You need to be like much brighter or they won't feel it, right? Now, again, a little bit brighter, which is great, but this is still mostly about value because it's $2,000 less. It is a little bit brighter, and again, I can increase the brightness by a little bit more if I needed to. And it has the motorized lens, and it has all glass optics. Now, with the previous comparison, $18,000 Epson to $19,000 Sony, $19,000 JVC, that $1,000 is kind of irrelevant. But in this case, $2,000 comparing 10 to 8, that's a decent amount when you think about the overall budget. You could potentially, if they have the budget for a $10,000 projector, instead sell them an $8,000 projector and then use that $2,000 to do something else, to upgrade some other part of their system. Right? Maybe give them better audio, right? Maybe give them control for the room. Maybe add speakers on the patio, something that increases the value in the customer's mind. If you do that, the customer will be happier with the spend and therefore stickier to you as a client. Right? So I think actually $2,000 difference at this $10,000 budget does make a difference and can help you, right? $1,000 difference at basically $20,000 product, that doesn't matter, okay? So that's the QB1000 versus the Sony XW5100 ES. Value meets performance, right, is really what the QB1000 is all about. All right, time for the last demo. This last demo is why you all came here. You came here for the violence and the spiciness, and I'm finally going to give you all the spiciness you want, right? Because you know they say, you know who your worst critic is? Yourself. I'm going to beat up on Epson with another Epson. So I'm going to show you the two QL models, right? I'm going to show you the QL3000 now on this side, 6,000 lumen projector. And I'm going to compare it to the QL7000 on this side, 10,000 lumen projector. Okay? This is $16,000 plus the lens. This is $32,000 plus the lens. Both projectors have the same chassis, 22.4 by 22.4 by 7.5 inches, 47 pounds. They both run off standard power. They're both compatible with the same family of lenses. They both are available in black and white. This is 28 decibels of fan noise at 100%. This is 32 decibels of fan noise at 100%. So essentially the difference is largely just the price in the dollars. Do you need 10,000 lumens or can you get away with 6,000 lumens? That's what we're going to ask here today. Now, for this demo, we are booting, it looks like. It should be the outside projector.
Oh, sorry about that.
Oh, you're fine.
I think that's right.
That looks very similar. Look at all those extra lumens. All right, so for this demonstration, let's recap for a second. What I showed you with the lights out was primarily kind of the relative HDR brightness kind of thing, right? Overall, for all of these demos, we're talking about size. These are 160 inches. So these are not tiny screens. Yeah, we can go larger, but 160 inches is a good size screen when you think that, you know, again, a 100-inch TV you can get for $1,600. So this is much bigger than that TV. The other thing I talked about was putting projectors in non-conventional spaces. So how am I going to demo that for you? Simple. I'm going to do this demo with the lights on. And I want to be serious here for a second, right? Look me in my eyes. I want to be serious for a second. Remember, these are Studio Tech screens from Stewart Film Screens. You do not put these screens in a room with the lights on, with any light. These are not screens for lit rooms. These are reference screens. So what I'm about to show you is extreme. These screens are literally screwing me right now. But with 6,000 lumens and 10,000 lumens, I don't care. It doesn't matter. That's the point I'm making. If I can make 160-inch reference screens look good, then I can put a projector in just about any room in your client's house. That's the point. So, and to really drive this point home, I'm going to show you bright content. I'm going to show you SDR NFL. Because here's what happens, right? Your friend puts in the theater, he calls you up. He says, hey buddy, why don't you come on over? We'll hang out in my theater room, we'll turn the lights off and watch sports. And you're like, no, that sounds terrible. I do not want to sit with you in the dark watching NFL. That's a nightmare. Please turn the lights on, right? And so we need to be able to watch sports the way God intended, with the lights on, right? At 160 inch, what you're looking at is 4 separate NFL games at 80 inches each. If you tried to do this with the $1,600 TV from Costco, congratulations. That's 4 50-inch NFL games. And you're sitting 10 feet away. What are you doing, right? You can't see the game. All you're trying to do is show off to your neighbor. And I recognize that showing off to the neighbor is like half the reason we do this stuff, because our neighbors are terrible people and we just want to like, screw you, buddy, right? But the reality is that 50 inches per game on a 100-inch screen, you're not watching football. You're not, right? Now we're watching. I'll give you one last kind of fun little factoid. You guys are aware of motorized screens, right? They've been around forever, right? Ask yourself a question. What percentage of screens that you sell and install are motorized versus fixed? 0 to basically less than 1, right? Hardly any. Why is that? Well, that's because projectors aren't bright enough to go in rooms that aren't dedicated. And if a room is dedicated for watching a projector, why would you spend more money on a motorized screen? You just put in a fixed screen. Therefore, there's no point for a motorized screen to exist. It's been the weirdest thing forever. And now all of a sudden, you have a projector that's bright enough to put it in a living room, and you can put a motorized screen, and you can finally have a conversation with the client that says, how about you face your couch away from the blank wall and point it toward the window that you spent hundreds of thousands of dollars for that view, and then you can look at your backyard, and you can look at the trees and the mountains and the lake and the river and whatever else is out there, and then you can have a motorized screen that drops down and you can watch it when you want to. Right? We've always had that idea, but we basically haven't been able to pull it off unless they also turn off the lights and they also drop the shades and they also. Now you don't have to do that, right? So that's what we're here to talk about. And again, yes, I do want my competitors' market share. I'm not going to pretend that I don't. That's part of the strategy we have. But that's not the only thing I'm offering. That's not the only thing I'm asking. What I'm suggesting is that if you understand what Epson is trying to do with high brightness, you will sell more projectors.
Ja, das war jetzt super interessant, dieser Epson-Vergleich. Es ging letztendlich ausschließlich um Helligkeit. Er hat es fair gemacht, also er ist jeweils in den Bildmodus gegangen von den Beamern, die hier verglichen wurden, zwischen den Modellen QB1000 und den QL-Modellen von Epson. Auf der anderen Seite dann bei Sony den ganz neuen XB5100 von JVC, hier oben dieser NZ800. Und dann hat man noch von Sony den XB6100. Da ging es immer um das Thema Helligkeit auf Basis der Standardeinstellungen und dann halt einfach zu zeigen, okay, was bedeutet es, wenn jetzt ein Kunde mehr Helligkeit eben im Heimkino hat. Bedeutet größere Leinwände, Tageslichttauglichkeit für Wohnzimmer. Und ja, das ist definitiv ein Punkt, zumal die Epson-Projektoren wirklich hier frische Impulse in den Markt geben. Gleichzeitig sage ich, Helligkeit ist nicht alles. Es kommt immer auf den In-Bild-Kontrast an, nur auch da sind die Epson-Beamer wirklich herausragend gut. Und es kommt immer auf den Anwendungsfall an, wie weit sitze ich weg. Ich habe zum Beispiel ganz ehrlich mit den Epson-Beamern die Situation, dass wenn man zu nah dran sitzt, und wir bauen ja unsere Kinos gerne so, dass du wirklich im Film versinkst und da finden wir einen Sitzabstand von Faktor 0,9 bei einer Breitbildleinwand, was wir jetzt hier gerade nicht haben, durchaus sinnvoll. Dann hast du beim Epson-Projektor eher so einen leicht digitalen Effekt. Ich will die Dinger jetzt gar nicht schlecht machen, ganz im Gegenteil. Es hat jeder Projektor seine Nische und das ist halt jetzt das Gefährliche. Wenn jetzt hier Leute zu dieser Verkaufsveranstaltung gehen und hören sich dann Informationen an, die jetzt rein auf die Vorteile von Epson sind, repartieren das dann zum Kunden, sehe ich halt die große Gefahr, dass dann womöglich nicht das perfekte Produkt rauskommt, weil je nach Anwendungsfall, Konzept, Bildvorlieben etc. halt vielleicht ein anderes Produkt auch sinnvoll sein könnte. Aber trotz allem sind die Epson-Projektoren so stark, wie nie zuvor von ihrem Produkt-Line-Up mit den neuen Modellen. Das muss man ganz klar erkennen. Hier sieht man übrigens den QL3000 war es, glaube ich. Hier steht es jetzt nicht dran. Mit dem Snorkel, wie die das nennen. Das heißt, so kann man sich auch einen Beamer installieren, hier oben in die Decke. Aber ja, das ist jetzt natürlich schwierig, weil ehrlich gesagt, wenn man jetzt hier reinkommt, sieht das jetzt... Ja, man kann es jetzt nicht richtig vergleichen. Das wäre vielleicht sinnvoller, hier was anderes laufen zu lassen. Oder vielleicht bin ich jetzt gerade zum falschen Moment hier. Aber ist auf jeden Fall auch eine wirkliche Lösung, die es erlaubt, die Vorteile von Projektoren zu nutzen. Abgesehen davon, wenn ich jetzt gerade an Großbildfernseher denke, hört es ja da irgendwo so bei ca. 110 Zoll irgendwo auf. Und dann kann es halt mit den Beamern so Richtung 160 Zoll gehen und eben noch Akustikleinwände nehmen. Nur dann hast du wieder das Thema Helligkeit. Womit wir dann aber zum Schluss wieder beim Thema des Konzeptes sind. Unser Lieblingsthema, weshalb wir ja eben sehr viel Wert auf das Kennenlernen vom Kunden und seinen Bedürfnissen legen.